in this presentation, I will share a research study that I conducted in my classroom last year, and I presented some part of this this study at AAAL and also TESOL. I mean, they're all recorded. I didn't really present. So in this one, since we don't have like conference type of time constraints, like 15-20 minutes, I will share a longer version of this study findings. So I plan to do like 30 minutes, maybe. I hope that's okay with everyone. So let's go ahead and get started. So in this study, I explored international students' collaborative writing experiences, both face-to-face and online. And I looked at their perceptions of online collaborative writing, their interaction patterns during both face-to-face and online collaborative writing, and also their perceived academic writing development. So in the literature, in the scholarship, there are a lot of studies on collaborative writing, and they all found great things about collaborative writing, and it has a lot of affordances for L2 writers. It impacts their learning positively, and also it provides scaffolding and peer support. Also immediate feedback since students are working together at the same time. Well, ideally, when they're collaborating, they're technically supposed to provide feedback throughout the whole process. And they can get immediate feedback opportunity. And some of the main features are joint ownership, mutual interaction, and negotiation among collaborators. So these were defined as some of the main traits of collaborative writing. Since this was my dissertation project earlier, so I did an extensive literature review on this topic. So I'll share some of the findings from the literature review. First of all, the perceptions. Most of the studies, both face-to-face and online collaborative writing research, they found positive perceptions of L2 writers, both in ESL and EFL settings. Some of the academic effects were better paraphrasing skills and increased writing motivation. And also during the process of collaborative writing, students were able to pool their ideas, flexible scheduling, also user friendliness, mostly for online collaborative writing activities on Google Docs, and also effective communication. Since students could collaborate on online documents asynchronously, they didn't really need to meet or anything. So it was also found as one of the affordances of collaborative writing: flexibility and fluidity, and instant feedback opportunity, as I mentioned. So another topic that was explored in the literature was interaction patterns in collaborative writing activities. And some of the main, the Storch 2002 research was, this one is the seminal work, and most of the scholars after this study, they conducted interaction patterns studies in collaborative writing activities. And some of the patterns that are found in collaborative writing activities are collaborative, dominant, passive, expert novice. It was found in this study, but also in other research, researchers found collective or cooperative interaction patterns. This is actually very common, and when I share my findings, you'll see that this was the pattern of interaction that my research found. For collaborative writing, the main difference between collective, cooperative, and collaborative, the definition is a little tricky, but for a writing task to be the interaction pattern to be collaborative, feedback, providing instant feedback throughout the whole process is very critical. If students, they just divide the work in the beginning, they just work on their individual parts and then combine their work at the end, then it's not going to be collaborative, even though they contribute equally and they each do the same amount of work, since they did not co-construct the text while providing feedback to each other, then it's not going to be considered collaborative. Also, some of the Chant 2020 study also found that when students have collaborative interaction patterns, they have better chances of resolving disagreements, and also the text can be more accurate. Some of the affordances of collaborative writing are reducing anxiety and stress, especially for international students. This can be a big factor. Writing academic papers, argument papers for 1901, 1902 students that we're familiar with, students can be anxious about writing academic papers since they did not have any experience. So collaborative writing can help with that. Also, it helps develop problem-solving skills. And it creates an environment to show for students to show their text in a non-threatening atmosphere. Hopefully this is the case for all collaborative writing groups. Promoting social interaction among collaborators, language socialization impact, and also becoming better academic writers thanks to the target language exposure. Also, there were some challenges found in the literature in collaborative writing. One of the challenges that are commonly found in the literature was proficiency differences among collaborators. So if one student has higher L2 writing proficiency compared to his or her partner, then one student can take the lead, and the interaction pattern also can be dominant and passive, one student not contributing enough and one student just taking the lead. That was one of the challenges. Also, fear of critiquing or hurting peers' feelings. This can also be seen a lot, especially providing feedback and criticizing somebody's work. Providing constructive feedback can be like cultural to some students, especially from my teaching experience. I've noticed students, they tend not to provide feedback to their peers, not to hurt their feelings. So this was also found in the literature. Unproductive group members, participants' unfamiliarity with collaborative writing, especially for first year freshman college students. They might not have had any collaborative writing experiences in the past. So if they're unfamiliar with what they're expected to do, that might be challenging. Communication issues between collaborators is also another challenge. Too dominant or passive writing partners. This can depend on the proficiency levels. And finally, lack of clear instructions regarding what students are expected to do, and group members. And in this scholarship, the impact of collaborative writing on students' writing development was also extensively researched, and most of the studies found it improved students' content, organization, and vocabulary use, some positive impacts on grammar and linguistic accuracy of text, complexity and fluency, writing quantity and quality was positively impacted, better grasp of academic genre, and also repairing lexical errors. So some of the research gaps that let me do this study that I conducted in my classroom was most of the collaborative writing studies, both in face-to-face settings and also online collaborative writing settings, they were conducted in relatively short time periods, maybe like 2 class sessions or 1 week or 2 weeks with just one task type. So to explore students' perceptions and also interaction patterns. I thought there needs to be a longer time periods because students' perceptions might change based on the task type or their partners. If they have a very good partner for one task and they change their partner for the next one, then their perception towards collaborative writing will be like totally different, right? So I just wanted to fill this gap. And also in ESL composition classrooms, collaborative writing has been extensively used, but there are not that many research conducted on international students' collaborative writing experiences. So I will talk about these like research questions. First, perceptions toward collaborative writing and what impacted students' perceptions, and interaction patterns during online collaborative writing activities. And again, what impacts these patterns of interaction? What are the affordances and challenges experienced in online collaborative writing? Also, COVID-related campus closures effect on students' collaborative writing experiences, online collaborative writing experiences, if it had any, and also perceived academic writing development after engaging in collaborative writing activities. So in terms of theoretical framework, my study was guided by Vygotsky's sociocultural theory and also collective scaffolding, since there needs to be at least 2 participants for collaborative writing. It fits the sociocultural views of learning. And also for collective scaffolding, since students are expected to provide feedback during the process of collaborative writing. Collective scaffolding is also another theoretical framework extensively employed in the literature. For methodology, I employed teacher research methodology, even though teacher research has been extensively used in other fields. In the field of second language writing, it's not employed as much. So I employed teacher research. So this study was conducted in one of my classrooms. And it was conducted during spring 2020 in an ESL composition class over 15 weeks. And students learned introductory level academic writing, such as paraphrasing, summarizing, coding, and using documentation styles. For the first 8 weeks of the semester, students engaged in both face-to-face and online collaborative writing. But after the spring break, after the 8th week, students could not meet face-to-face due to COVID-19, and they worked on their papers asynchronously for the rest of the semester. These are my participants. I had 4 focal participants, and the participants were selected based on their former collaborative writing experiences. So I selected 2 participants who had former collaborative writing experience in previous courses, and 2 students who had no collaborative writing experience at all. And as you see, these students were from different majors. And 3 of the students were freshmen, and I had 1 transfer student, junior student. Some of the tools and tasks that were used in this study, students to work in pairs, both face-to-face and online, using Google Docs. And they completed 3 tasks: literary analysis, source project, and argument paper. The nature of writing task for all 3 of these were different. Also, the argument paper, while students had chance to work both face-to-face and online for the literary analysis and source project assignments, the argument paper was conducted fully online, asynchronously, because of the COVID. Some of the data gathering instruments that I used, I had interviews. Students wrote weekly reflective journals, very short, just a short paragraph every week. And after each assignment, they submitted peer evaluation forms, evaluating their partner's collaboration and everything. And finally, I used AuthorViz and DocuViz contribution charts as data sources. This is a Google Docs feature. If you use Google Docs, you can add these to Google Docs, and it basically visualizes contributions. To examine interaction patterns, I used the dyadic interaction model, the one Storch used, and also for the online interaction patterns, AuthorViz and DocuViz were used. For data analysis, I used thematic analysis. Also, for the purposes of this presentation, I will mostly focus on the interview data, but the comment sections of peer evaluation forums and also the weekly reflective journals, they were coded and they were thematically analyzed for the purposes of this research. So findings for the first question, the first question was to explore students' perceptions toward collaborative writing. And my first focal participant, Amy, was one of the participants who had former collaborative writing experience, unfortunately not a good one. And she described her former experience as very terrible. Her partners were not willing to do the work because they perceived the course as an easy A class, and they were not willing to do it. So basically, Amy had to write the whole article by herself. As a result, she did not like or enjoy her experience, and she had a negative perception. But in the, I forgot to mention here, in the beginning of the semester, I told all my students that they would write their papers collaboratively, and I asked them if they prefer individual writing or collaborative writing after explaining what collaborative writing would entail. And all focal students, they in their reflective journals, they stated that they preferred individual writing. That was important to share there. So after engaging in a semester-long collaborative writing, Amy's perception has changed from negative to a positive one. As you see here, she defined her collaborative writing experience as amazing, and she liked it. It was also a nice way to reduce her pressure. Because she had a collaborative writing partner who was more confident than her in writing. And also she was able to see how her partner constructed the sentences, how he elaborated his ideas and everything. So seeing that was, it provided a good peer scaffolding opportunity for her. So she learned from her partner. Another participant, Wei, was also the one who had former collaborative writing experience, and unfortunately, he also did not have a positive collaborative writing experience before taking this class. He mentioned that the topic might not interest every group member, so based on that, the students who are not really interested might not contribute too much or as much as the other ones. Also, if there is a proficiency difference between the participants, one of the participants with a higher writing proficiency might need to teach the other student, and it might take too much time for the student with a higher L2 writing proficiency. So based on these things that he experienced, his former experience was not a desirable one. So for Wei, I asked him during his interviews if his perception has changed after engaging in collaborative writing tasks, and he mentioned that collaborative writing is good, and he only needed to work with one partner. So in the past, he had a group project for one of his other courses with four other students, and it was harder for him to collaborate with all three other partners that he had. And also he mentioned this free writing issue. in collaborative writing, this can be really common. One student doing most of the work and the other student not contributing as much, but hoping to get the same grade. Also, he mentioned that since they needed to write 8 to 10 pages, it was a nice way to divide the workload. So these were some of the factors that changed his perception towards collaborative writing. For the other students, Yolanda and Cheryl, they are the students who had no collaborative writing experience in the past. And when I asked them about their perceptions, Yolanda said having a good partner is an important factor. And also similarly, Cheryl also shared having a good partner and getting some help fixing any grammar issues and other writing related issues were some of the factors that affected their perceptions positively. The next part is on the interaction patterns, since one of the research questions aim to explore students' interaction patterns during these collaborative writing tasks. So most of the collaborative writing scholarship, in the studies, they found different interaction patterns. One group having like collaborative, the other group having dominant passive or collective. Unlike most of the other studies, all groups had same interaction patterns in this study, cooperative or collective. When I asked them how they planned the process of collaborative writing, they all stated similar things. They divided the work equally and worked on their parts. And then Wei also said the same thing as Yolanda and Amy. In the beginning, they would assign parts, and then once they worked on their assigned parts, they would just get together or send their parts to each other and revise each other's work. So here I'll share the DocuViz chart that Google Docs generated. So as I mentioned here, all students, they stated that they divided the work and they worked individually and then combined their parts. So I checked if that was also proven by this DocuViz chart, because this application tracks all their contribution to the papers. So for Cheryl and her partner, this is for literary analysis assignment that they had. If you can see here, edit of other and like total contribution numbers like characters. So they edited like each other's parts like almost equal numbers, and contribution numbers are also like very similar. So this also shows that students contributed equally and they divided the work. They had a clear division of labor. For argument paper DocuViz chart for another group, again, similar numbers of contribution and also editing each other. This was also similar in terms of contribution. And finally, for this chart, you'll see that the numbers, the contribution numbers, the students said they divided the work equally. But when I checked the contribution chart, I saw that Amy, in this case, with the over 10,000 contribution compared to his partner, I asked this in my interviews to the group, and Wei explained that his partner, actually, they had some miscommunication on the topic, and she actually deleted 2 paragraphs that he wrote, and then basically she rewrote her partner's part. That's why the numbers were a little off here. But he said since she did that, the chart was accurate. So for interaction patterns, the contribution data are also in line with what participants stated in their interviews. Students basically divided the work, and during the process, they didn't really provide feedback to each other. and they didn't really like discuss as it would be the case in collaborative, like truly collaborative writing. And also, since participants had similar L2 writing proficiencies, they didn't have any expert novice interaction pattern, since students are placed in the scores based on their ESL placement test results done by the university. They were all at similar L2 writing proficiency levels. For the affordances and challenges in online collaborative writing, I'll quickly go over these. Participants experienced some affordances, and also there were some challenges too. For Google Docs, participants had positive perceptions because of accessibility and also writing comments and revising, as Yolanda stated. For Amy, she said that she could just write her part and see what her partner was writing and updating their assignments immediately. Seeing the changes instantly on the app was also another factor for Cheryl, and they didn't really need to get together in the library or any other place, since they could just work asynchronously on each other's parts, or they could see what their partners were writing, and also saving a lot of time was another factor. Was another affordance. Well, some of the challenges were also explored in this study. Misunderstanding was one of them for Amy and Wei, which resulted in Amy's. She had to delete 2 paragraphs her partner wrote, because once they combined their partners, they found out that they were not talking about the same thing, so there was a misunderstanding, so they had to change. And also, she had some communication issues. Her partner was not checking his WeChat frequently, so it was a little frustrating for her. For Wei, he also mentioned that the misunderstanding was one of the challenges that he experienced. The impact of COVID-19 on students' collaborative writing. Since students worked on their argument papers online using Google Docs, the campus closures or not meeting face-to-face, it didn't really impact students' experiences, since they use Google Docs. But they mentioned in the first excerpt, as you see, Wei mentioned the efficiency of the feedback. So before the campus closures, students would still work on Google Docs, and they would come to class and they would have some class time to discuss the feedback they received from the instructor. And then if they don't understand any of the instructor's feedback, they would just ask during the class for clarification. So he mentioned that not having that clarification session in class in person was one of the factors that impacted his experiences negatively after COVID. And also, WeChat was used among students and Google Docs, so it wasn't really it didn't have any effect. But one of my students, she actually had to go back to China, while 3 others they were able to stay here. So when she went back to China, she wasn't able to access Google. So she stated that China doesn't allow Google, and she had to use VPN to do her work. And also, I asked students to find scholarly sources, Google Scholar. So she was using Google Scholar in the US, but when she moved back to her home country, she wasn't able to access to Google Scholar or Google Docs. So it was a little, it impacted her collaborative writing experience in a negative way. And also, as a result, it took her more time. For feedback, as I mentioned briefly, since they had fully online collaborative writing experiences, students, they did not have any face-to-face discussion of instructors' feedback. as you see in the first excerpt, sometimes it's easier for students to understand in-person feedback. And when we were able to meet in person in class, they would ask me for clarification, and I would always give at least 15-20 minutes for students to get together with their partners and discuss the feedback I provided them on Google Docs. So they would ask me that, but after COVID, they didn't have that. Also, students mentioned the application WeChat that it provided instant feedback. To accommodate students, I also used WeChat after the campus closures, and they mentioned that it helped them a lot for quick communication and to get immediate response. So the last research question was on the perceived impact of collaborative writing on students' academic writing development. I didn't get to do like actual academic writing development, analyzing their papers, but I just did how they perceived their academic writing improved. All 4 participants stated that their academic writing has improved after engaging in collaborative writing activities, like 3 different ones. And they stated like especially citations and having a partner who was more comfortable doing citations. Also APA and other formats, students had a chance to try both APA and MLA formats in their papers, and that impacted their writing. And also, as Yolanda stated here, she learned how to work with others, collaborate with partners. And Wei was one of the students who had undesirable experience, but he also stated that practicing writing with a partner was beneficial, and he also learned APA style. Amy was the one who had writing anxiety in her reflection papers and also in her interview. She stated that she doesn't have the fear, the anxiety about writing, the length of her paper. And in the past, she would spend a lot of time on writing, but she had a good partner who was a confident writer, and also that helped her improve seeing her partner's writing. So in terms of perception, students had positive perceptions, but these were some of the factors: responsible and equally contributing partners affecting their perception in a positive way, and similar L2 writing proficiencies. They didn't have one student being too passive, they didn't have to teach someone else. And also reduced workload was one of the factors impacting their perception in a positive way. Interaction patterns, all 4 of them had collective pattern of interaction. It was very clear in interviews and also the DocuViz charts. And this interaction pattern was not affected by task types. For all 3 task types, they had the same interaction pattern. They divided the work in the beginning and then worked on their assigned parts and combined their assignments. For the affordances of online collaborative writing, accessibility and efficiency of Google Docs was mentioned during the interviews, transparency, instant feedback, and also creating a conducive environment for collaboration. Some of the challenges were lack of engagement with each other's writing during the process due to this clear division of labor, some communication issues, unresponsive peers, and limited face-to-face teacher feedback opportunity was also one of the challenges when they did fully online. For academic writing development, students perceive that they improve their academic writing in terms of APA citation. They reduce their writing anxiety. They learned how to collaborate with partners, peer feedback and revision. Online scaffolding on Google Docs also helps students to extend their ideas by seeing their partners' sentence construction and everything. Finally, some recommendations for L2 writing teachers to plan effective activities. The first one I have here, laying out clear expectations in the beginning of collaborative writing tasks. Students, they might not know what they're really expected to do just because it's collaborative. They need to be trained in collaborative writing with clear expectations, what they're supposed to do, what does joint ownership mean, what is negotiation, like providing like peer feedback and how to approach critical feedback. They might think that by providing feedback, they'll hurt their partner's feelings. So providing this training, like about how to provide feedback and handle feedback is helpful. Also giving autonomy to students to select their collaborative writing partners. This can be very helpful. For this study, they were able to see each other in class, but for this semester, for instance, I'm using Flipgrid. Students are posting their videos with their interest, and whoever one is interested or shares similar interests, they can respond to each other's videos. Like they can have partners with similar interests. And in class time, if it's possible, for possible revisions for teacher feedback. Google Docs training is also very important because since students might not have any access to Google products in their countries, they might not know how to use Google Docs. They're usually pretty good and tech savvy and all, but sometimes they might not know how to use the features. If Google products are not available, Microsoft Online, Draft, Etherpad, and Canvas collaborations, they have similar features as Google. Also for asynchronous online collaborative writing, Microsoft Teams and WeChat is also helpful to facilitate the communication during the process. And finally, peer evaluation forums can prevent free writing issues, since students will know that their instructor will evaluate their contribution. They will try at least to contribute equally. All right, that's all I have. You can see some of the references with this QR code. I know I had a lot of references since I did some extensive literature review, but you can find all the sources here.